Nash Altar. Adventure level 9. Orc. Nullivan.
Bored now, Tits said, grabbing Nick. Let's go.
A whirlwind of darkness and light enveloped Nick and Tits. The maelstrom unleashed a volley of heat which burned my face, but it quickly collapsed in on itself with a cork-like pop. York and I stared, stunned, at where they had just been standing. Mamaldabran and Algebran let out a synchronous sigh.
Well, I guess that settles the debate, Mamaldabran said.
Where did they go? I demanded.
Probably close to the enemy encampment, but far enough away to escape notice, Algebran replied. I understand your fears, Nash, but rest assured, Tits will not allow Nick to perish.
Whether or not Tits allows his death is not our concern, York interjected, a measure of anger seeping into his voice. Our concern is whether or not Tits can prevent his death.
He's got you there, Algebran, Mamaldabran chuckled.
Tits will do everything in their power to prevent Nick's demise or injury, Algebran said calmly. Even if their power ultimately fails, we have other measures that can be taken. Mamaldabran's uncharacteristically jolly face fell into an expression more suited to it.
Do not make promises that you cannot keep, Algebran, the King of Archfey warned.
I am fully willing to explore these measures if the need arises, Algebran said. The higher ones obviously have a vested interest here, and the court doesn't hold me in
Enough!
Mamaldabran's shout echoed through the trees surrounding us. It stood and marched over to Algebran until they were face to face. The two stared angrily at each other. What are these measures? I asked, once my ears stopped ringing.
Not for you to know, Mamaldabran said coldly. It is a secret that you must hope with all your might to never uncover.
What? Wait, so if it's used on Nick, he'll uncover the secret?
What? No.
Mamaldabran turned to me with a confused stare.
Mortals aren't capable of observing their surroundings when they're dead. To him, he'll die and then wake up, if it's allowed.
It will be allowed, Algebran said with a serious tone.
So you say, lesser one.
Mamaldabran scoffed and retook its seat. I have my doubts, and they are far more reasonable than your certainty. Oh, whatever. No use poking at theoretical wounds. Orcs, what are your plans? Plans? I asked. We haven't had a chance to make any, York said with a dour chuckle.
Fair enough. Algebran can take you to wherever you want to go and have Nick meet up with you later. Or you can aid us in our fight and we will reward you.
Well, that's an easy decision, I replied. Obviously we... What reward are you offering? York interrupted. I turned to him, stunned at his sudden callousness. He held up a hand to reassure me, and then I remembered who we were dealing with. A reward to one can be a punishment to another, and the fair folk are strange ones.
Oh, good catch, Mamaldabran laughed. If you had left the reward up to me, I don't know if I would have been able to resist the bag of bugs prank. What would you consider a reasonable reward to be?
The aid of the fair folk who reside within the deep wild forest in helping Nick return to his home seems reasonable, York said, turning to me. I nodded my assent. Our goal is to return him from whence he came, as if he hadn't left at all, by the way. York grinned, as he turned back to Mamaldabran. Can't have you giving us a way to get him back a few decades after he left, or some other such twist of fate.
Ah, well, I don't know if we'll actually be able to help, but I can assure you that we can certainly try.
Mamaldabran nodded.
The higher ones are offering the same reward to Nick for his compliance with their various suggestions, Algebran added.
Then they've likely arranged for this discussion as well, Momuldraban sighed. Very well, I agree. If you aid us in this fight, we will do everything within our power to help Nick return to his point of origin, home, wherever the hells he was before he came here.
Then it's settled, York said. Do we need to shake hands or sign something?
Nope. Just go along with Algebron and get equipped. I leave them to you.
Momuldraban nodded at Algebron. Understood, Algebron replied, moving between York and I, placing a hand on each of our shoulders. Prepare yourselves. By the time I had registered what Algebron was going to do, long before I could have prepared myself, darkness settled over my vision, and I once again felt an inexplicable pull. The feeling of Algebron's hand faded for a moment and then returned, but the darkness remained. It took a moment to realize that I was clenching my eyelids. With a deep, calming breath, I opened my eyes and took a look around. Interesting, York said. That wasn't as bad on an empty stomach. Yeah, poor Nick, I chuckled. We had appeared in a clearing that was filled with fae, fairies, and every other variation of the fair folk that I could imagine. There were some that were familiar to me, like the bone and blood fae, and others whose natures I couldn't even begin to guess at. In the center of the clearing were several large trees that were rapidly sprouting massive bluish-green fruits. One such fruit finished its growth and dropped to the ground, while waiting fairies began carving it into slices with remarkable expertise. The slices were further carved into a transparent square, and handed off to a set of bone fae who were attaching handles to them. My jaw dropped as I realized that these were the shields that Nick was talking about, and the Wilder had already made hundreds of them, maybe even thousands. Bushes surrounding the clearing were also rapidly growing their branches in an obvious spear shape. Wilder were harvesting these branches and passing them out. Algebron patted York and I on the shoulder and cleared his throat. Well, this is where we're equipping everyone, it said. Get yourself a spear and shield, Nash. I prefer my axe or swords, I explained. I'm sure your skill with those weapons would serve you well in a one-on-one bout with a vampire or brood. Algebron smiled condescendingly. However, this is a full-scale battle, and you are at just as much risk as we are. It would be best if you joined the shield line. And I will be right behind you, York said cheerily, blasting all the vampires that you managed to stick. Algebron nodded at York's enthusiasm, and before I could protest, he gently guided us towards a line of Wilder. They were grabbing one spear and one shield each and moving on. They moved aside as we approached, and Algebron grabbed a shield and spear before turning back to me. Here you go, Nash, and try these on for size, it said, handing them to me. I examined them, surprised at how light they were. What little experience I had with shields screamed at me that this one was far too light to be effective, and that it wouldn't even be able to halt a swiftly thrown rock. It must have shown on my face, though, because Algebron laughed. I assure you it's quite sturdy. We've already replaced a decent portion of our front with them, and they're holding up nicely, it explained. That being said, their lightness is an issue. You won't be able to rely on the heft of the shield to keep the enemy from pushing you back. Instead, we've found success with digging the shield into the ground, where possible. Makes sense, I nodded. Okay, I guess I can work with these. Excellent. Alright, this way. We trailed after Algebron, as it led us away from the Fey equivalent of an armory, and toward another large group of Wilder. I took in some of the sights as we walked, and almost immediately wished I hadn't. Under a copse were several Wilder that were in various states of dismemberment. Half a fairy fluttered around carrying leaves to a Fey with nothing but a jaw for a face. I realized that this must be their medical tent, and a shudder crawled up my spine when I noticed how quiet it was. There wasn't a single member of the fair folk beneath that group of trees that shouldn't be in extreme pain, but some of them were actually laughing. Don't let it get to you, Algebron said, either reading my mind or expression.
Our physical forms are only a small part of our being, and we don't feel pain as you do. The injured and dead are the lucky ones in this case. Those that were captured are bound in iron, which is one of the few things on the mortal plane that can cause us to experience actual physical pain.
What are some other things? York asked. I looked at my brother with an unimpressed expression. Surely he didn't actually believe that Algebron would answer such a great...
Truth be told, the world's heart contains a great many things that are hazardous to us. Silver, gold, platinum, and copper are the few metals that won't harm us. Aside from iron, the other metals you know of will hurt us, but not kill us, it explained. Then there's the metals you don't know of, which are just as hazardous to you as they are to us. There's other things as well, but that's a conversation for another time.
My shock at the explanation was short-lived, as we then had to follow the Archfey through a group of Walder. It was difficult, but eventually Algebron came to a halt in front of a group of Bonefey, and we followed suit.
Greetings, King Horth. I trust you're enjoying the fight, Algebron said.
Indeed, Horth said. You bring me orcs? For what purpose? A snack? An addition to my collection? Both, perhaps?
You forgot us so quickly? I asked with a laugh.
Forgot you? When have we... Oh, right. Basinov's axe.
Horth laughed.
Which makes you Nash. And that is Yolk. Yes, I recall. So not a snack, then?
No, not a snack, Algebron said. They're to join you in combat on this day. Guide them well and enjoy yourself, for this may be the last fight we face against this foe.
Truly? Shame. They're quite strong. Basinov fell, by the way.
I know. They'll be back, though.
Yeah, sadly.
The King of Bloodfey fell. How? York asked.
How did the King of Bloodfey fall against a horde of vampire brood?
Horth laughed heartily.
How do you think? They swarmed over Basinov like a buffet. It was hilarious. I'm never gonna let him live it down.
Oh dear.
Right, well, I leave them in your care, Algebron said. I hope to see you again soon, Outer Brothers.
We said goodbye to Algebron, who surprisingly departed on foot instead of through some kind of trans-dimensional portal or whatever, and listened to Horth discuss strategy with some of the other Bonefey. Thankfully, there wasn't much to discuss, and soon we formed up and began to march through the forest. I found myself at the front of the formation, with York just behind me. We marched for a while in silence before I felt a tap on my shoulder. Are you nervous? York asked.
A little. You?
Nope. I've got you with a big shield in front of me, and all I have to do is cast Fireball a few times. He chuckled.
Lucky you, I said sarcastically.
The march continued until we cleared the trees.
Form the line!
The Bonefey next to me halted, and I followed suit. The rest of the Bonefey in the rear of the formation came forward and stood next to us. With a hint of jealousy, I noted that their spears were way cooler than mine. I glanced back and saw that there were plenty of Fey and Fairies accompanying York, too. We wouldn't be wanting for firepower, that's for sure.
March!
We continued onward until we saw the first signs of battle. Smoke clung to the air, stinging my eyes and throat. A Fey standing on a fallen tree noticed us and shouted something, and a bunch of Walder began to run in our direction.
Open ranks! Let them through!
The formation opened up, allowing the fleeing Walder to pass by us without issue. Hot on their heels were a horde of vampire brood. I took a deep breath and stilled myself.
Close ranks!
Our formation closed just before the brood hit us. Remembering Algebron's advice, I dug my shield into the ground and pushed with all my might. I struggled for a moment, then remembered my spear. I pulled back, then thrust the spear forward, and feeling it hit home. Claws and teeth scraped and gnashed at my shield. The brood pinned against my shield by its comrades were as hideous as it was livid. It had no nose, ears, or eyelids, and his gnashing jaws contained sharpened teeth in a proper line like an elf's. The bones of its fingers and toes were exposed, with the ends of each tapering off into claws. The creature's muscles twitched out of sync with its movements. Piercing red eyes met my own, with pure, unadulterated rage as it struggled to find a way through my shield. Fireballs flew over our shields, slamming into the brood and igniting them. Some of them fled, but others were impaled and couldn't escape so easily. The brood my spear had found screeched and jerked erratically as it tried to free itself from the flames. Once it stopped moving, I pulled the spear free. The remaining brood had backed up a ways and took a moment to gather themselves. Then they attacked again, much to the same result. I stabbed but didn't feel anything, so I tried again and again until I got one. More fireballs flew, more brood ignited, and the brood gave ground once again. "Forward! Don't let them rest!" We lifted our shields from the ground and stepped over the still burning corpses of the brood to go after their comrades. The brood looked nervous, but before they could flee, they were pushed aside by drow. The drow began to charge at us, and it wasn't until they opened their mouths that I realized they were vampires. "Hold!" Our shield slammed into the ground again, and I prepared to thrust my spear home. Then, the drow stopped moving and appeared stupefied. Seeing this, the brood panicked and ran in the opposite direction. "What? Already?" York asked.